Well, I'm a Christian and not a Hindu or a Buddhist. Hinduism is the world's third largest religion. It has roughly, these are the older numbers, the solid numbers I could find, about 800,000 in North America. Some numbers place that now over 2 million in North America. So it's a sizable bunch of Hindus in the United States. And that's compared to about 2 billion Christians in the United States, 1.3 billion Muslims in North America. They're closing in, folks. Hinduism gets its name from the Indus River, which runs through Pakistan, India, and China. This is where kind of Hinduism kind of arose, and it's an old religion. Aryan invaders filled the Indus River Valley around 2000 BC, and the folks who were already there, they kind of meshed together and they took each other's religions and just kind of meshed them together, and out of that would eventually spring Hinduism. And priests began to produce what's called the Vedic Literature. There are about 4 different holy books in Hinduism, and the Vedas are something I had to study in seminary. They're strange and very ancient books, and they're really difficult for people with kind of a Western mindset to understand because they have no problem with contradictions. They think logical contradictions are logical, and so it's kind of tough to get your mind wrapped around a lot of it. And just like we saw, if you'll remember, when we looked at Islam in week 1, part of the problem with studying the Quran is because the Quran was written over roughly 20-odd years and written by Muhammad, and Muhammad's attitude changed over the years, and so the books change, right? In the Quran, if you look at the different chapters, as we call them, they go from Muhammad being very open and appreciative of Christians and Jews, and as the years go by, as he starts to add chapters, he becomes increasingly hostile to Christians and Jews. And so there's this development, this evolution within the Quran. Well, within the Vedic literature, there's, over the years that it's written, over the hundreds of years that it's written, there's a change there too. The early Vedas are polytheistic, which is why most people kind of identify with Hinduism, the 330 million gods out there, God for everything in Hinduism. But later on, as you get to later Hindu literature, it begins to change to a more pantheistic instead of polytheistic faith. And so what that means is, like we talked about over the last couple weeks, kind of like the New Age movement, everything is God. So Hinduism kind of goes from there are all these gods to everything is God. You're a god. Right? And because they believe in reincarnation, everything's a god, everything could be, right? You have those kind of things in Hinduism as well. And so Hinduism is really difficult to understand because you can believe almost anything and be a Hindu. There are 2 staples we're going to look at that you have to believe to be a Hindu, but I mean, you can, other than these 2 staples, you can believe in almost anything. Millions of gods, no God, everyone's a god, whatever. And that's why it's so hard to convert Hindus, because you can sit there and tell them about Jesus Christ, and they'll be great, and they'll just add Jesus Christ to their growing number of gods they worship. Like, okay, God number 12, sure, and it's very, very difficult. Most people know, of course, about the caste system. Now, the caste system also was developed by the Brahmins. The Brahmins are the priests. And wouldn't you know it that when the Brahmins began writing the Vedic literature, who stands at the top of the caste system? The Brahmins, right? What a shocker, right? That the people writing the books and developing the caste system put themselves at the top. And they put themselves at the top along with nobles, people with money, right? They're at the very top. Under that, the next level are the warriors, right? Then you have the warriors down there. Of course, you want to keep them happy and keep them close to the caste system because they've got weapons, right? You keep people with weapons happy. Under that, you have merchants and laborers. And then under that, you have slaves. So that's the caste system. Now, many of you are looking at that going, you've heard about one other part of the caste system you don't see there, which is untouchables. The untouchables were thought so little of, they weren't even a recognized group in the caste system. They were considered subhuman. You were not to speak to them. You were not to touch them, obviously. You were not to feed them. You were not to... and the caste system existed roughly from before the time of Christ all the way up into 1947. In India, it was rigidly enforced. And so the Untouchables in the time when the Brahmins are writing the Vedas, the Untouchables were homeless, those that were mentally ill, those who were physically handicapped, those kind of people were all labeled untouchable. And the thing was, when they put in that caste system, if you are a product of any of those people, you are automatically an untouchable. And there's no way to break out of it. You were just born into your station in life, and that's the way it was. And this went on until 1947 legally. But when India became a separate state after it broke from, Great Britain with the help of Gandhi and so forth, you can watch the 3-hour movie if you want about all that, and India becomes its own nation, they outlawed the caste system. But it still existed, especially in like the sticks, right? Outside the cities and so forth, it was really slow to change. And so the caste system still existed for many, many decades after that in the outlying parts of India. Today in India, and this is the weird thing, you would think Hinduism. Hinduism, you've got this pantheon of gods, if you want to believe in all these gods, 330 million of them, or no god or whatever. You'd think you could just believe and be whatever. But in fact, when I worked for a Christian legal ministry, we had an international wing, and the area that kept us most hopping was India. And Hindus were going after Christian missionaries with a violent zeal. In one village, there was a Christian revival, a village of about 36,000 people in India. There was a Christian revival there. A number of Indians came in, Hindus came in and began to kill the missionaries and pastors, and 36,000 people were living in the jungle in fear. And we had to pressure the government to send the police in to enforce their toleration laws so that they could come back into the village. So despite this, like Hinduism, you think, well, they can believe anything they believe, but they've actually become rather radicalized, in their faith. Some of them have. It's really bizarre. And this is what's really strange. Fritz Ridenour in his book, So What's the Difference, writes, Hinduism is not really one religion, but many religions that interact and blend with one another. There is no known founder of Hinduism. We don't know who the original Brahmins were that did this. We don't have their names. There are no creedal statements of faith to sign and no agreed upon authority. In fact, one can be a good Hindu and believe in one God, many gods, or no God at all, right? So you would think, what's the problem? Why are they so upset with people coming in? But it seems to be mainly cultural. Megan and I watched a documentary some time back, and it covered both Hindus and Muslims, and their big thing was that Christianity, they believe, brought in Western culture. And Western culture, brought in all these evils with it, which, flipping through reality TV and so forth, you can understand kind of where they're coming from at times. Heck, our presidential race has turned into reality TV, for goodness sakes. So it's, you can see kind of where they're coming from. They kind of really do equate Christianity with America and American culture. And so that's where some of it's coming from. Well, what are the two beliefs? What are the two things you think? To be a Hindu, you have to believe in two things. What do you think those are, if you had to take a guess? Reincarnation. And what goes along with that? What goes along with reincarnation? Karma, yeah. The two fundamental things you have to believe to be a modern Hindu is reincarnation and karma. Now, we talked about this, right? This is a bizarre kind of belief, but karma is not just, if you haven't been here lately, karma is not the way it was used on My Name is Earl, okay? If you've seen the TV show My Name is Earl, I'm on the karma train, that kind of stuff. It was this kind of, people use karma today in America as like, I'll do good, good will come back to me. If I do bad, bad will come back to me. That is not karma. That is more of a New Age kind of The Secret kind of thing, right? The book The Secret, you know. If you send out positive vibes, you'll get positive vibes kind of nonsense, right? I've tried positive vibes in New Boston. It hasn't worked. So, yeah, this is karma. The way it teaches is essentially that every action you make has either a merit or a demerit, and it attaches itself to your soul, and then it determines your next reincarnated state. That's karma. Has nothing to do with the here and now, has everything to do with your reincarnated being. Make sense? So they believe in, Hindus do believe in the eternal and uncreated Atman, or soul. And so what they really do is they take this seriously. Any action you take kind of attaches to your Atman, and that determines whether in your next life you're a rock or a cockroach or whatever, or you're a Brahmin, right? Or the ultimate, you become one with the nothing or whatever. You're one with ultimate reality, whatever in the heck that means, you know. But that's kind of where they go with this. And reincarnation is not seen as a positive thing. A lot of people in the West, like Shirley MacLaine, remember when she was pushing all that stuff, kind of looked like reincarnation was a good thing. Reincarnation is seen by Hindus as an evil suffering. They don't want to be reincarnated. They see all life as suffering, so they see reincarnation as a bad thing. They don't want to be reincarnated. They want to become one with the ultimate reality and escape reincarnation, the endless wheel of reincarnation. They see reincarnation as what they call samsara, or cycle of suffering, and the goal is moksha, which is liberation from this, to become one with Brahma, the ultimate reality. So reincarnation is not a good thing to Hindus. It's a bad thing, and they want to break free of it. So your goal is to do as much good karma as you can so that your soul gets better and better and better, and you're finally, when you're reincarnated at some point, you break free of reincarnation and you become one with the ultimate reality, right? That's what they want. And Hindu priests typically lay out 3 paths to liberation. By the way, before I leave reincarnation, it's always bugged me. Have you ever noticed that anyone who believes in reincarnation was always somebody famous in a past life? They were never like Joe Schmo from Des Moines, Iowa, right? They were always like Abraham Lincoln or, Joan of Arc or something like that,
So is that how they work through the caste system, is being reincarnated?
The only way to break free of the caste system is to be reincarnated in a body of a higher caste. Yeah. Yeah, that's what the Brahmins would say. Absolutely. So the Hindu priests or Brahmins will lay out 3 paths to liberation. The path of works, dharma, if you've heard that one. The path of knowledge, and the path of passionate devotion, bhakti. And the third one is easily the most popular. It's the most popular because it's the easiest to do, frankly. Right? It's kind of a passion. You pick a god, one of the 330 million gods. You pick a god. And you can pick the earth and universe as God. You can pick, Gaia, Mother Earth, as God, if that's what you want to do, if you believe everything is one, that kind of stuff. But the most popular are Vishnu or Shiva, and you see them up there. Vishnu's on the left and Shiva's on the right. Is that correct, Megan? And the majority of Hindus choose either one or the other. And with Vishnu or Shiva, they believe that Vishnu has appeared in many different forms over the centuries as different heroes or saviors. And one of the reason I kind of put Hinduism and Buddhism together is they believe Vishnu, one of his kind of incarnations was as Gautama, or as you know him, the Buddha, right? There is supposedly the Buddha. So we're going to talk about Buddhism for a second, then we'll cycle back to talk about Hinduism and how these kind of come together, because originally Hindus rejected Buddhism and now they've tried to co-opt it. Gautama was born to a very wealthy Hindu family near the border of India and Nepal. He was married to what people describe as an incredibly beautiful woman, had a child, but he abandoned them at age 29 to seek enlightenment. There's a famous, Buddhists will tell you there's this famous prophecy that when Gautama was born, a Hindu priest told his father that, his son would be, would continue to be wealthy and would continue the family line and all this kind of stuff, only if he didn't see three things. And so they sheltered him and they kept him inside the castle and they wouldn't let him out. And then one day he's walking the castle wall, or he's made it just outside the castle, and he sees all three things in front of him. I can't remember the order if they come, but it was like someone who was sick, and he sees these three things, and it shakes him up, and he's like, oh, there has to be more to life than my beautiful wife and all this money. Donald Trump would disagree, but there was, and it's like there's got to be more to life than all of this, and so he goes out and tries to seek enlightenment. And so what Gautama does is he studies Hinduism first, but he ends up rejecting it. He decides that, Hinduism just doesn't do the trick. He tried it, and it just, at the end of the day, didn't leave him fulfilled. And so he decided he had to come up with something else. So what Gautama does is, of course, what you do, you go sit in a tree in a lotus position, and he says, I'm sitting here until I get truth. And so probably when he started to cramp, he found truth. And he eventually, these truths, he wrote them down, and Buddhists still look to these today as the way to salvation or nirvana. Right? Buddha coined this term, nirvana. It was not just a 90s grunge band. It was, his view of salvation. So the Buddha lays out four noble truths. Number one, suffering is universal. Everybody suffers. Number two, the cause of suffering are selfish desires. That it's all selfishness. If we didn't pursue our cravings, our selfish desires, there would not be so much suffering. Tell that to Jesus on the cross. And he says the cure is enlightenment and eliminating these desires. And so if you learn to overcome your cravings or desires via the Noble Eightfold Path, then you will achieve nirvana. Salvation, and you will become one with the nothing. Isn't that what everybody wants? To become one with the nothing. Yep.
All sound Christian-like, except for take the word enlightenment out, put Jesus in there at all.
It's somewhat, but it's not, because it's going to teach you, one, that you have to do this on your own. It's you have to do this. Just like Islam, Judaism, Mormonism, it's up to you, not someone else. They refer to Buddha as a savior only in the sense that he shows you how to save yourself. Okay? And it's not just, and when he talks about these cravings, these selfish desires that we have, it includes almost anything you can think of. A lot of which the Bible says is good, right? One of the greatest parts, other than when we're told about salvation through the cross and resurrection of Jesus Christ, we all know that one of the grandest parts of the Bible is when God appears to Peter on the rooftop and says, you can eat bacon. He says, what I have made clean, do not call unclean. And that includes pork chops and bacon. And we all know that once Peter got over the heebie-jeebies of taking a piece of bacon, his sanctification level went up tenfold. All right? But they would say, a Buddhist would say, no, you should take no pleasure in food at all. Right? I mean, it's eliminating all pleasures. Pleasures within marriage, pleasures of raising a child when they actually do something right. Those kind of things. Christianity embraces those things, right? It's good and right. And Buddhism says, no, those you need to get rid of that stuff. I mean, I know a Buddhist who actually, tell you this is how much, that encountering someone who had lost a child said, oh, they just need to get over it. Because you just need to eliminate all those stuff. They basically seek to eliminate all feelings altogether. Do you see what I mean? That's not Christian, right? So what's the Eightfold Path? First of all, right view or understanding. In other words, to see reality as it is. Right? To see that emotions are bad, cause suffering. It's almost like Yoda, right? George Lucas steals a lot from Buddhism, a lot from Eastern stuff. So, and Yoda tells Anakin in that horrible prequel to Star Wars, anger leads to hate, hate leads to, blah, 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 goes all that kind of stuff. Hate, and it's the Jedi's not to love or hate, he's basically not to feel anything. He's supposed to be just a stoic who doesn't feel anything. That's Buddhism. So you see reality right, which is that all things are suffering, you need to overcome it. Then you have to have you have to have perfect emotion or aspiration, right? And that's basically liberating your emotional intelligence. You act from love and compassion, but they define love very, very oddly. You look at that, go, oh yeah, that sounds great. But part of the way they love is to tell people not to love, not to feel, right? That to the Buddha is love. Is you get people free from their emotions, and you've loved them. Right speech. Your speech needs to be clear, uplifting, non-harmful communication. You need to learn to speak right. But again, the way they define right and the way we would define right would be very different. I tell people, because I have seen this, I understand Christians have very noble aspirations when they go to somebody at a funeral and say something like, well, take comfort in knowing it was God's will, right? It was his or her time. And when I've heard that, I've told you this before, I want to smack them, just backhand them and go, well, I guess that was God's will too. You don't do that. Well, what do we do? When someone is hurt, when someone is suffering as Christians, we're to hurt and suffer with them, right? We're to empathize with them. We're to cry with them. We're to, right? Okay, now Buddhists say, no, your job is to get them not to cry and get over this. That would be a right speech, right action. Do not exploit others. That's a big one. Right action. Don't exploit others. Right livelihood. Be ethical as they would define ethics. Right diligence. Put all your energy into this. But when they talk about this, mostly we're going to see, especially in Zen Buddhism, put all your energy basically into, this is what's odd. They would say you need to escape yourself, and the way you do that is focusing on yourself. But as I've told you, I mean, it's just, contradictions are not a problem for anything coming out of Hindu thought. You look at these logical contradictions, Buddhists will say, one of the ways you have to overcome yourself is to spend all this time on yourself. And you're like, what? But they don't see that as a logical contradiction. Right mindfulness, developing awareness, and we'll talk about this in a minute, how you develop this awareness of people and reality. And then the last one is just this pulling everything together in kind of a holistic kind of approach. Now, there are three major forms of Buddhism. Like anything else we've seen, every religion has had its split. It's not just Christianity. There are no religions out there that have not had splits. We saw in Islam, right, the two major splits between Sunni and Shia. And we've seen it in Mormonism. There are two Mormon churches out there. There's one in Illinois, there's one in Utah. We see these splits. Well, Buddhism has a number of forms as well. Hinayana Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, and Tantrism. Right. These are kind of the three biggies. There are others out there because kind of like Hinduism, a lot of people will call themselves Buddhists and just kind of like a buffet. They'll just take what they want, right? And they'll kind of approach it that way. Hinayana Buddhism was derogatorily referred to as the lesser way. That's why they renamed it today. Those who adhere to it now call it Theravada, the way of the elders. And basically, the only way to reach nirvana in this way is to become a monk. You have to become a monk, you have to become an enlightened one, you have to become one of the elders and all that kind of stuff, and that's the only way you're going to do it. And you have to strictly follow the eight-way path, you have to strictly follow the way of the Buddha, and then anybody else who does this, if you follow Hinayana Buddhism, because it's so strict and it's so, if you do that, basically, if you're doing it and you're not a monk, the best you can hope for is to be reincarnated as a monk, and then take it up in your next life. That's the only way to do it, bless you. So you see that this does not have a wide appeal, right? And so that's why they call it the lesser way, because not that many people practice it. A lot of monks practice it, but not a lot of just average Buddhists practice it. So Mahayana Buddhism, or the Greater Way, is another one, and that's open to all, and there's a possibility for anyone to achieve nirvana through that. And Mahayana Buddhism also is different in that it elevated, it's a little small, it elevated the Gautama to the level of a savior. But when I say saviors, like I was talking with Joey earlier, they don't mean that the Buddha did something to save you from your sins or from eternity. It's just that he showed you the path where you could save yourself. So you will see some people in Mahayana Buddhism, which is the biggest, this is the biggie, this is where most Buddhists are at. In Mahayana Buddhism, when they speak of Buddha as a savior or as a god, they don't mean it literally. They don't mean he saves you, they mean he just showed you how to save yourself. Does that make sense? Okay. Because typically Buddhism is, the majority of Buddhists are atheists. Buddhism is largely an atheistic religion. Now, we said that sounds weird, but we looked at a couple of those. Wicca is that way. A lot of New Age movements are that way. If they're not atheistic, they're at least agnostic. Right? And so they have elevated him to the level of a savior, but like I said, it's just to save yourself. And in America, the most popular form of Mahayana Buddhism in America is Zen. And Zen simply means meditation. And this is where things get weird, because this is what you see. This is what you see through Shirley MacLaine. This is what you see through Eat, Pray, Love, that kind of stuff. It's Zen meditation essentially is, in order to free yourself from yourself, you have to spend a lot of time with yourself. If you follow that. You have to spend a lot of time in meditation to discover the self. And the whole line of thinking basically is, if I understand it correctly, is that we cannot defeat ourselves and overcome ourselves until we truly understand ourselves. You know, my response to that is somebody who has been a pastor for all these years is, typically when you spend that much time thinking about yourself, you just become more obsessed with yourself, right? Some of the most narcissistic people I have ever met are Buddhists trying to free themselves from themselves. Because it's all they think about is themselves, right? They're so focused on themselves. And it's really odd. I mean, it's just, I really don't understand it. Now, a lot of people came to understand the term Zen through a popular book from the early 70s. Anybody got a guess what that is? Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, right? It's sold millions of copies. It has sold millions and millions of copies. It's still, in any bookstore, with a few bookstores that are remaining, it's there. You're going to find it. It's in every Barnes & Noble, it's in every Books A Million, it's everywhere. The book is really, really boring. It's really boring. It's about a professor, an English professor, who has a nervous breakdown and decides to get on a motorcycle and drive across country. And he records all these conversations he has with his friends and his son and all this other kind of stuff, and about the nature of truth and excellence and subjectivity and objectivity and all this other kind of stuff. And it's really like pop philosophy kind of 101. And it's not very good. I read it and I was just like, this is just, I'm OCD, so if I start a book, I have to finish it, But that was painful. That one was really, really painful to finish that book. Don't pick it up. It's not, and it's really not teaching you about Zen. It really doesn't. A lot of people think they know Zen because they've read that book. That's really not what Zen Buddhism is really about. Zen, if you take it just as meditation, I guess but that's not really what they mean by that. If you're in meditation, if you decide to become a Zen Buddhist, all right, the way most people do this is they just pick up a book or something, but the way you're supposed to do it is you're supposed to go to a monastery, right? Go see a monk, and you sit down with the monk, and you talk and all this kind of stuff, and the monk will teach you how to do this, which, by the way, Mahayana Buddhists, some of their temples are worth millions. Absolutely millions. The Dalai Lama lives like a king. Because he's got people like Richard Gere and Shirley MacLaine, all these people throwing money at him all the time. All these wealthy people. Steve Jobs used to throw money at him all the time because Steve Jobs considered himself a Zen Buddhist and all this other kind of stuff. And they would just throw money at them. I mean, the Dalai Lama walks around and, in robes and stuff like that. Then he gets on a Learjet, and flies back to his mansion with his security guards. I mean, it's, there's a lot of money involved in this. And you'll typically find these around pockets of kind of secular, liberal places with a lot of wealth, right? So you're going to find a lot of them in California, right? LA, San Francisco. There are a lot of Buddhist temples around there. Just outside of New York City, there are a lot of them, right? So you'll find them outside of Miami. You'll find them outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico. You'll find them out in Sedona, Arizona, and places like that. You'll find those kind of places. And what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to go to a monk, and the monk will help teach you how to meditate correctly. Typically what you do is you sit on a pillow, which you can buy from the monks, and for a small love offering. And so they go and you buy the stuff and you get your big mat and you get on there and you get in the lotus position and you sit there, and some will teach you to, you've seen it, right? Try to get all distractions away and all other kind of stuff. And other times it's just being in quiet. Some will tell you that it's okay to burn incense and turn on a little New Age music or nature sounds, right? Sounds of whales. I've been with people. It's like I go to sleep to this. It's like whales crying. I'm like, that's giving me nightmares. Are you kidding me? It's like, oh, I'm like, you go to sleep to that? What kind of childhood did you have, dude? But you're supposed to go, and they teach you how to breathe. And if you've seen, I'll save you the trip. Seen The Karate Kid? In through nose, out through mouth. There you go. All right, now you know how to breathe properly when you meditate. All right, that's what you do. That's how you discover the self. What about Tantric Buddhism? This is a kind of what they do. Tantric Buddhism takes Mahayana Buddhism, the most popular, and they kind of then took Tibetan occult practices and put them together. And so this is really kind of weird. Tantric Buddhism, if you go and you hang out with some Tantric Buddhists, it's like one part meditation and one part like Wicca. It's really strange. And a lot of really odd symbols come out of this movement. You know where the swastika comes from? Tantric Buddhism. Hitler took the swastika from Aryans because they were called Aryans. And the Aryans are the ones who helped found Hinduism. And that's where the swastika, comes from. Now, he had some mistaken beliefs about it, but he took it. He also liked it because a lot of his people said it looked like a broken cross, a twisted cross. But you'll go to, if you hang out with somebody who practices Tantric Buddhism, like how many people are old enough to remember Sting from The Police? Yeah, he's a Tantric Buddhist, right? And so he's a Tantric Buddhist. And so if you hang out with these folks, it's not uncommon if they have their little room where they go meditate, it's not uncommon to have like a pentagram on the wall, right? That kind of stuff. That's not uncommon. All right, well, what does it look like to be a practicing Hindu or a Buddhist? Like, what are they doing on like Saturdays and Sundays or whatever? Hindu temples, and that's a Hindu temple. Hindu temples differ based upon their deity, because different ones, some may be dedicated totally to Vishnu, some may be dedicated totally to Shiva, some may have a main room for Vishnu and a little room for Shiva or something like that. The temples are supposed to be built following the Vedic literature, the ancient Vedic literature, but they really are more designed for function, right? And so normally what you have is there's a main stage with all of these idols or one or a bunch of idols up there. And you're not allowed to get up there. Only the priests are allowed to get up there, right? And there's a stage, and then there's just a place. And it's like if you would go into our auditorium where we're going to worship here in a little bit, it's like that except no seats. Typically you sit on the floor. So it's like that, and so the priest or puja will come up there, and he'll do a ceremony that can last a few minutes or a few hours. And they'll go in there, and they'll get in front of the idol, and that's kind of how it'll start. The priest will approach the idol, and there's some there, and ask for the deity to come and indwell the idol for the service, right? So ask Vishnu or Shiva or whoever to come and be inside of this idol for a few moments. And so the deity comes down, indwells according to them, and then they offer it sacrifices. Uncooked rice. I don't know why uncooked. You think you cook for a god, but don't just hand them raw groceries. But they give them like milk, rice, all that kind of stuff. They offer this to the god. And then people will offer prayers to them. It's not uncommon while this is going on to see a Hindu, if they're worshiping Vishnu or Shiva, to ask for good health or their kids to quit acting up or what. Same stuff that you all pray for, right? And they'll ask the god for that kind of stuff. And then they'll sing to them. They'll sing Vedic hymns. And so it's not really that uncommon. If you go to a Hindu temple, you just need to know a couple things. Some Hindu temples will let you come in and watch. Some others will kind of frown upon it. It just depends what kind of priest you've got there. But you can come in, you can watch. You can know a couple things. One, you have to take your shoes off. As soon as you come in, you have to remove your shoes. It's considered rude to wear your shoes into. You're not allowed to wear them into the place of worship. You can't go in there with them. So, hope you have fresh, clean socks on when you go. You don't want to, stink up the place. But you go and you have to remove your shoes, and then you go in and you watch the service. Like I said, the service can last who knows how long. It just depends on the priest and what he's got going on that day. Buddhist practices, like I said, depend on the form of Buddhism, but most just simply meditate on their own. Right? There are Buddhist centers you can go to other than just Buddhist monasteries, right? There are Buddhist centers you can go to where you can get teaching and instruction. Of course, they're going to charge you, right? But they're basically going to teach you how to meditate. They're going to give you little pamphlets with the Four Noble Truths and the eight-way path to nirvana and all that kind of stuff. And there you go. And if you're in a Tantric Buddhist, they may give you some kind of occult practices to do. It's not frowned upon in Tantric Buddhism to use a Ouija board or whatever. That's all that kind of occult stuff is fine. Mahayana Buddhism, you're just going to be taught how to meditate, and you're going to be taught the truths, and you're usually going to look to a monk to do this. And to become a monk, you basically have to be a practicing Buddhist, and the monks have to accept you as a fellow monk. There's not like Buddhist seminary you go to. You have your master's in meditation, and now you can go, and get your ordination or something like that and be a Buddhist monk. It's pretty much the monks that are there kind of accept you in. And there is kind of a hierarchy there among the monks. But most of them live pretty well. I mean, they don't, they usually avoid relationships and stuff like that. But they live pretty well. You don't have to feel sorry for them. Any questions so far? How are we doing?
Do they live well because they avoid relationships?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I couldn't resist. Do they live well because they avoid
It probably doesn't hurt. They're not having to make many trips to Bed Bath & Beyond. Or Yankee Candle or whatever, yeah. It's just...
You said you like doing that.
I like you.
In Hinduism, do you have to actually be from India to be a Hindu? It's not, okay.
No.
But Hare Krishna would be...
Hare Krishna would be an offshoot. I mean, it's just a form of an offshoot. And so they believe in a certain kind of worship service and so forth that they believe is based in the Vedic literature, but hardly see them anymore. I mean, they've really kind of decreased in number. I guess since they ran them out of the airports, they had no other place to go,
They have a big place up in Wheeling, was it, the Hare Krishna?
Yeah, it's not as big anymore, though. It's really kind of died out. It's just not as big as, part of the problem here in America is, let's face it, if you want to be a Buddhist in America, most people don't want to be a monk. And they don't want to shave their head, and they don't want to do the Krishna, all that kind of stuff. They're like, here's the Four Noble Truths, here's the Eightfold Path, here's your prayer mat, go at it, right? And do your own thing. Because we like doing our own thing, right, in America. So that's why especially Zen Mahayana Buddhism is so popular. Because it's just whatever you want, man, right? That's what's so ironic about, how many of you have seen the movie or read the book Eat, Pray, Love? Anybody? A couple? Okay. I mean, if you've read it, you know, I mean, in the movie anyway, Julia Roberts' character, you know, trying to discover herself is arguably the most selfish human being you've ever met. I mean, she just is. You know, ditches her family and everything, go discover herself, and it's depicted as some kind of noble thing to do. Not noble. You know, it's selfish. That's what's so ironic is that, you know, Buddhists claim that they're going to overcome selfishness by being more selfish. And it just doesn't make any sense.
Now, are the Sikhs, are they part of?
They're more of an offshoot of kind of a mishmash of Islam and Hinduism. Yeah, they're kind of their own thing. And it's largely, there are Sikhs here, but they're not that big in number. It's largely in Pakistan. There are a large number of Pakistan. India, Pakistan, in that border area, yeah, there are a lot of Sikhs.
Independence Day parade in D.C. this past year, the parade ended with a huge Sikh
Yeah.
thing. I was like, that was really weird.
Yeah, it's weird, because you just don't, you know, for various reasons, you don't see them out and about. You're not going to see too many of them in Scioto County, to be sure. You know, you do, I would encounter one or two there in L.A. when I lived there, and maybe one or two in D.C., but that was, you know, I'd never seen them. I didn't even see them in upstate New York, which is, in upstate New York is about as weird as you can get. We weren't that far from Woodstock, so it was, you know, we didn't see many there. Saw a lot of Buddhists, but not a lot of differences. How does Christianity and, you know, Hinduism and Buddhism differ from Christianity? Well, first of all, Christianity is a historic faith rooted in Scripture and that are supported by evidence. When I say that, look, like if you look at the Vedas' creation story, how the universe came to be, it's all chaos and all these gods and all this other kind of stuff. What we know from science is the universe is very orderly. It was not produced by chaos. The universe is incredibly well ordered and follows set laws of science, which points to a creator, a very careful, intelligent creator, designer. Right? This is scientifically supported. We know the universe had a beginning, and we know the universe cannot create itself. Right? Matter does not create matter. You can't just, you know, things do not just pop out of nowhere. You know, Jim Bays and Megan and I last night had a pizza. We went to a pizza place to get the pizza. We did not sit there and wait for the universe just to pop a pizza out of nothing and be right there in front of us. That does not happen, right? It just does not, matter does not spontaneously create stuff. It doesn't happen. And we know that, of course, and most of the Vedic literature is in no way, shape, or form, just like Mormonism and other religions we've looked at. There's no historical evidence for it, right? The story behind Mormonism has no archaeological evidence behind it at all. Christianity does. We have a lot of evidence. We know from sources outside the Bible, Jesus Christ lived and died, and his followers claimed he was resurrected and died refusing to deny that. Right? We have history behind that. Whereas, you know, Hinduism, Buddha, and so forth doesn't. Christianity teaches there is only one God, and the only way to salvation is through Jesus Christ. If you think about especially karma, because Buddhists also believe in karma and reincarnation. They did adopt that from Hinduism, right? And so if you look at that, you can think, can there be any deathbed conversions in Hinduism or Buddhism? You're going to get reincarnated, but it's going to stink, all right? If you haven't thought about karma till you hit your deathbed, you're in trouble, right? You're going to end up being a rock or a cockroach or whatever in your next life. Mosquito with Zika. You're going to be something like that. And so, in Christianity, you know, because it's not our work that saves us, it's Jesus Christ's work that saves us. That his death on the cross pays the penalty for our sins. That he gives us his life to be judged by his life instead of our own. That even the thief on the cross could be saved at the last minute, right? What does Jesus say to him? Today you'll be with me in paradise. If you read your Gospels clearly, when Jesus was first nailed to the cross, the thief is calling him names. 3 hours later, he's begging him for salvation. And Jesus says, you got it. Right? And so this is the way it is, because it's not our work. The Bible does say that we will be rewarded for the good we do in the body of Christ. We're not told what those rewards are. Quite frankly, once we get to heaven or the new heavens and the new earth, we'll probably be happy with a pat on the head from Jesus Christ. You know? But we don't know what those rewards are, but we know there's no punishment, right? We are saved. When Jesus Christ took the punishment for our cross and the sins, he said, "It is finished." That means we don't do anything. And so, as we've seen in Hinduism, Buddhism, we haven't covered Judaism, but Judaism's the same way. Mormonism, again and again, it's basically based upon, your afterlife is based upon what you do. A balance sheet. And what Christianity says, and it's so counterintuitive but it's true, is that, nope, it's based solely on what Christ has done. Faith, not works, is the key to salvation. We do good works, not to earn anything, not to feel more righteous. We do good works as Christians out of gratitude and love for what has done for us. Right? If you stop and feed somebody, if you take the time to disciple somebody, if you share the gospel with people, as we all should, that is not done to earn a thing. It is done to say thank you to Jesus Christ for what he has done for us, right? And the Bible teaches that to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. There is no such thing as reincarnation in Christianity. We've covered this last week. If you die, today, if you die, if you're not a Christian, you go to Sheol, the place of the dead, and you wait the day of judgment. If you are a Christian, your soul goes to heaven, and you're with Jesus Christ. There's no other destination. When Jesus returns, everyone is judged. Those who are in heaven get their eternal bodies. Those on earth who are faithful to him get their eternal bodies. Everybody else goes with Satan and his angels into hell. And we live with Jesus here on earth forever in physical, eternal, uncorrupted bodies. Right? That's the way it happens. There's no this endless cycle of samsara and hope for moksha and all other kind of stuff. That does not exist. You cannot square that with Christianity. Now, it is true that the Bible does talk about, because Hinduism is very old. Very, very old. And Hindu thought was present in Jerusalem and in Israel during the time of Jesus. I mean, it predated him by 2,000 years. And, Alexander the Great had already been there and back. So all this stuff has come in. So there were people who believed in reincarnation. That doesn't mean, the Bible doesn't say that means they're right, any more than when the disciples thought Jesus may be a ghost when he was walking on water. Jesus is saying, yeah, people believe in ghosts. He wasn't saying he believed in ghosts. He was kind of a joke. He said, do you think I was a ghost? So you got to be careful there. Just because the Bible mentions something doesn't mean it condones it. This is where we get in trouble in the marriage debate. Oh, you Christians, you say marriage is one man and one woman. What about Solomon? The Bible's pretty clear that didn't work out well for Solomon. That all those wives and concubines almost sent him to hell. Didn't work out well for David either, right? Didn't work out well for Abraham, right? According to, if we're following the Old Testament right, we've got a mess in the Middle East because, Abraham couldn't keep in his pants. It doesn't work. It never works out. Nowhere, even though polygamy is recorded in the Bible, it is never endorsed in the Bible, right? And what does Jesus say when they talk to him? He says, hey, the way it was designed was Adam and Eve, that's it. Not Adam and Eve and who else you want. That's not the way that worked, right? And so you got to be careful. Just because something is mentioned in the Bible doesn't mean the Bible is promoting that idea. Does that make sense? You've got to keep that in mind. All right, a few minutes for questions, comments. No, it's not. It's not that uncommon. It's more common to convert former Buddhists than Hindus. The difficulty with Hindus, as I laid out, is because they often, a pure Hindu will just take Christianity and they'll just add it to their religion, right? And so they'll just say, oh, okay, yeah, I'll worship Vishnu and Jesus. And so it's difficult with a traditional Hindu. With a Buddhist, what I've noticed is that eventually Buddhists burn out. Because you spend that much time looking inward, you're going to find nothing, right? You're going to find nothing. We're not that deep, folks. We're just not, And so you look inward, you find nothing, and after a while, when you haven't reached nirvana, you haven't attained, oneness and all kind of stuff, I found that Buddhists who have been doing it for a while or are more open to the gospel. Now, that being said, one of the troubles you'll have with a Buddhist is they will not want to leave their meditation behind. Let me encourage you this. If you encounter a Buddhist and they start coming to church, but they're still meditating a half-hour day, hour a day, let them. Now, with this caveat, it's just like yoga. If you're doing yoga just to stretch and breathe, and you don't buy into all the nonsense that goes along with it, who cares? If you're meditating just to chill out, and a lot of people, if you haven't noticed driving, need to chill out, fine, meditate. But I would encourage them, meditate, but pray while you meditate. Instead of focusing on the self, focus on God while you meditate. Focus on Christ while you meditate. Focus on your salvation while you meditate. Focus on what we don't focus on enough, which is what God has done for us in meditation. We ask for a lot, we don't thank Him enough, right? Every day we have is a gift. The people we have around us, that's a gift we have, and we should thank God every single day for those things. So there's nothing wrong. There's a guy named Edmund Clowney, a late professor at Westminster Seminary. He wrote a book back in the 70s when transcendental meditation was becoming really popular. And there was a book out there called TM that became a bestseller, Transcendental Meditation. He wrote a book called CM, Christian Meditation. And he basically argues, he said, I see it, that there are health benefits to meditation. There really are. It lowers your blood pressure, focuses your mind. He said, the problem is that in the long run, if you're meditating on yourself, there's nothing there except errors, mistakes, shortcomings. And so he said, focus on God and focus on what God has done for you and all that kind of stuff and meditate that way. And there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Christ Community meets on Saturday at 5 p.m. and Sunday at 10:30 a.m. For more information, visit www.christcommunity.net or check out our Facebook page.